Hey everyone, it's me, the anti-black Barbie, the all-watchful eye of anti-blackness. So, we're back again for the second volume of the Colorist collections. When I originally uploaded the first volume, I was fairly nervous. I've noticed that when most people want to have these conversations, it typically has to be on a macro level, where we're covering someone who is a celebrity or some kind of influencer. But very rarely do we see people holding each other accountable on a micro level. Anytime we have to have an honest discussion about how someone from our community is showing up in society, all of a sudden people act like they're above these conversations. I think that a large part of this stems from people not wanting to be perceived as bitter, weird, or jealous. For so long, a lot of us have been conditioned not to say anything. However, as time has gone by, I think it's safe to say that that has done nothing for anybody, and staying complicit to these conversations out of fear is only making the situation worse, which is why I think the video had such a positive reaction. I mean, we're talking almost 5,000 views, over 500 hours of watch time, almost 300 likes. Now, for my Twitter girls, that may not seem like much, but on YouTube, that's a really big deal. So to say that the video has exceeded my expectations is an understatement, and I'm extremely grateful for how receptive you all have generally been in regards to my channel. Now, I know I'm a little bit behind with some of this tea, and I apologize. I have just been so overwhelmed with work, but it's better late than never, and I've made sure to put in some really good topics for you all. So, that being said, let's get started, shall we? I think the perfect person to start with is this Twitter user who goes by the name of Tarnu Sea. Kind of how this one started is Tarnu posted a photo of himself in which someone by the name of Verpus quote tweeted his post responding, "He's cute. Do you think he likes blacks?" And truthfully, I interpret this as a shady post. It could very well be genuine, but based off the way that they did it, I'm sorry, it comes across like shade. But it ended up opening a larger conversation around this person's dating history and the type of imagery that they prioritize on their page. When Tarnu saw this post, he immediately went to gaslighting and lying. His response to the post is, "You guys are so annoying, so let me kill this narrative. Why would you assume someone exclusively likes white dudes based on how they look? That's rude and illogical. A stupid question warranted a stupid response. I'm sure you can understand. I like my dudes all colors." And the thing is, no one asked you if you like all colors. We asked if you like black people. So skating around the answer isn't doing anything for me, because people say all the time that they're equal opportunists, but then naturally you find out that every single person in their dating history is white. I want to throw in a disclaimer that I don't think that there is a specific look to black men who swirl. I do, however, think that there are some who are easier to tell than others. But in my experience, the last thing you want to do is assume that there is a look to one of them, because the reality is most of them, even the ones you don't expect, are typically swirling. So naturally, I don't believe him, and it was time to do a little bit of research. After gathering my data, I ended up responding to him, "Someone's lying." I ended up following up with several tweets that I found going through his Twitter history. The first tweet that I saw that really stood out to me was, "I just need to experience dating a white guy. Once that mission is complete, I'll turn straight." He follows that by saying, "And it's funny because I've been on this mission since high school. I solely picked a predominantly white school to fulfill my gay fantasy, and I have not secured a relationship. Got down with a few snow bunnies, men, not women, but those were empty." This was July 16th of 2021. So this is what I'm saying. They are not willing to be honest, which is why we're seeing so many people get more aggressive. It's like if no one's going to start telling the truth about these conversations, then we're going to have to find the answers on our own. Because at this point, only a fool would take what they have to say at face value. The next tweet he says on July 16th of 2021 is, "I'm on Frank Ocean timing right now. White gays only. No fats, no femmes, no blacks." On July 12th of 2021, he says, "I feel my Dom Top era coming through. I need a fly white twink to dominate though." So I think that you all get the general picture that this is not somebody who is meant to be trusted. And I think what frustrates me the most is you have no problem tweeting about these things on a regular basis, but the minute you get confronted, you turn tail and hide. As I said before, the same energy you had when you were tweeting about these white bottoms is the same energy you should have right now. Don't come online bullshitting me like I don't know what's going on, because I'm not new to this, I'm true to this, and I can spot a rat a mile away. So lying in people's faces is not going to get you anywhere. The more these conversations get exposed, the harder it is going to be for these people to hide. After getting his wig roasted alive, he ends up starting to try and antagonize black people now that he knows he can't lie about it. He posts this photo captioned, "White man on my arm, no white man on your arm." And for me, I'm just like, why couldn't he have just started with this? It's like the fact that you came online and did all of this just to confirm what we were saying all along really highlights a certain level of cynicism that's resting inside this person. He has some other post around him dating white men for 2 days and it never went anywhere. Nothing noteworthy for him to really brag about. And I think it's really funny because the first tweet that I read off to you really highlights the experience a lot of chronic swirlers have. No matter how hard they center themselves in predominantly white communities, very rarely are they going to get the experience that they're looking for. 9 times out of 10, if they are going to get with someone white, it's either going to be in complete secret or they're going to have to date someone significantly older and less attractive than they are who is willing to be seen with them publicly. Anyways, on to our next one. The second Twitter user that we'll be discussing is someone who goes by the name of I Am Netflix. So, kind of how this one started is a Twitter user by the name of Godbod posted, "Sometimes I forget gay black men don't like gay black men, LOL," which ended up dragging the timeline into complete chaos. The serial swirlers, the milk maidens, and the Love is Love Brigade couldn't wait to jump at the chance to try and gaslight this type of conversation. Twitter user by the name of DLJ_ says, "Correction, the black guys I like don't like me back." Twitter user by the name of Zion says, "Y'all need to stop with this pick me energy." Twitter user by the name of Queerboy Clem says, "This conversation reeks of low racial self-esteem and entitlement." And these are the responses that I would expect from the average gay, black, or mixed man. Anytime someone chooses to try and have an honest conversation about what's happening within our community, it's typically met with a lot of gaslighting and deflecting. Rather than acknowledging that there's an issue happening within our community, they antagonize the people who are trying to get to the root of the problem. And 9 times out of 10, it's because they're feeling hit or something about that post resonated with them that they didn't like. Almost every single person that had an issue with what was being said typically was either reposting Raceplay, had a history of anti-black tweets, or generally displayed no interest in any type of black unity. Which kind of brings me back to I Am Netflix. He saw this post about someone being frustrated about the state of dating in the black community, and his first reaction is to quote tweet it posting, "I kissed a white and I liked it." And I think that his response is indicative of where we're at in this community. On one hand, we have a demographic who is committed to trying to unpack these cultural norms that are plaguing our community. And on the other hand, we have people who think that these topics are a joke and are interested in nothing but upholding white supremacy and derailing these conversations. Because whether or not this person is bitter, miserable, jealous, doesn't change the fact that regardless of sexual orientation, a large portion of black men are prioritizing non-black partners. It's like we have no examples of any queer celebrities dating someone black. We have no examples of black queer politicians dating anyone black. We don't have any examples of any athletes dating anyone black. And the list goes on. Black queer relationships are underrepresented in almost every single category, but somehow everyone else is the problem. And that's why the gaslighting for me is simply never going to work. Because whether we're looking at it on a macro or a micro level, the problem still remains the same. I kind of think it's interesting the way that I Am Netflix framed this post. I understand that he's trolling and calling on Katy Perry's "I Kissed a Girl and I Liked It," but it kind of follows the pattern of the "you can't help who you fall in love with." This is a common tactic that a lot of serial swirlers like to deploy whenever they feel cornered about their anti-black desire. They try to make it seem like it was some kind of coincidence or a chance encounter that they ended up with a white partner, when in reality, most of them, like I Am Netflix, are reserving themselves for white flesh. After I Am Netflix ended up going viral for his post, I did a little bit of research into his Twitter history, and again, it came to no surprise that he had a long history of chasing after non-black people. On February 21st of 2022, he tweets, "I'm with Young Miami. Where is the white boys?" On February 21st of 2022, he says, "Yes, I'm about to find my white bottom." And for me, I just wish that they would stop trying to bullshit these conversations as if we don't know exactly what's going on. According to his profile, this is somebody who lives in Atlanta, which is the gay black capital. So the idea that you just stumbled across dating a white person over the hundreds and thousands of people who are in your proximity really just kind of speaks volumes to what he was looking for. And whether people want to believe it or not, this is actually common in Atlanta. Despite it being overwhelmingly black, there is a large portion of queer black men who are reserving themselves for someone white. And it's really interesting because geographical region doesn't really seem to have that much impact on people's dating choices anymore. You either run into one of two situations. Either you're in a predominantly white area and the black men are just naturally conditioned and colonized to seek after white partners, or you live in a predominantly black area where a lot of the black men glamorize and fantasize over what it may be like to have a white partner. The only benefit of being in Georgia is that there's more black men to choose from because there's a higher population of black people, but it really doesn't hold much weight into these people's dating decisions anymore, if it ever did. But I definitely don't want to deter people from trying to move to populated black areas because it's definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. My first relationship was in Georgia, as well as my first ever black friend group. So I definitely don't want to underrepresent the importance of being in a predominantly black area. But to get back on topic, I just think that it's sad that rather than people unpacking their anti-Black desire, they do nothing but gaslight and deflect from the problem. So the next Twitter user I want to discuss is someone who goes by the name of Weed, W-I-D. He makes this tweet on November 24th of 2025 saying, "Now bish, this, some white trade, this my type when it comes to white boys." And in the photo, you can easily tell that it's a white man kind of cosplaying as someone Black. I just find so many things problematic with posts like this. I think that we already have an issue when it comes to white gays stealing and capitalizing off of a lot of AAVE or Ebonics. So the fact that this person is referring to a white man as trade, when that terminology is meant exclusively for Black men, only ends up making the issue worse. Black people like this love opening the door for cultural appropriation. As I said before, white men cannot be trade, nor can they be DL, nor can they be UNC. I mean, the list goes on. But for some reason, every single time you turn around, you either have an entitled white gay or a colonized Black man saying otherwise. And while that part is irritating, I think what I find the most disturbing is that his type is a white man who is playing a racist caricature of a Black person, which essentially means a white person being racist is your type. And I just have to pose the question, how far is your self-esteem in the gutter for you to be tweeting something like this? When I was doing a little bit of research, I noticed that this person has a history of creating space for cultural appropriation when it comes to non-Black people. On September 12th of 2025, he says again, "This is white trade." And it's basically another white man cosplaying as a Black person. On May 25th of 2025, he posts this photo of a white man rocking a bandana halfway saying, "This is white trade again." So I think it's safe to say that it's not a coincidence. This is more so of a pattern. And I just find behavior like this just so off-putting. Rather than just dating a Black person who is able to emulate these mannerisms naturally, he prioritizes a small portion of the white demographic who are doing racist emulations of how they think we operate. And it just kind of reminds me a little bit of the Kellon Derrick situation that I was talking about in one of my last Colorist collection videos. A lot of these people like Black culture, but only when it's on the skin of a non-Black person. And I think that he is a great example of this. I don't really see him posting any photos of Black men who are DL or trade or butch queens. Every single post he seems to make in regards to this aesthetic is typically somebody white. And that's why it's important to push back against cultural appropriation, because white people are able to do the exact same things that we do without being penalized or judged at a much higher rate. When they decide to be trade or DL, it's seen as edgy. However, when Black men are DL or trade, it's ghetto, it's tacky, it's unflattering. So I'm just heavily against people normalizing these types of behaviors because they're less likely to be judged and penalized in the same way that we are, while being able to profit off of the culture that is seen as inherently negative when we do it. Okay, so moving on to our next Twitter user who goes by the name of R. Marshawn. He tweeted on November 18th of 2025, "My type is 100% light skin." After getting dogpiled for a fairly obvious colorist tweet, he comes online and doubles down by saying, "I love dark skins, whites, Hispanics, etc. Stop being easily offended based off someone's type. If I said my type was 100% dark skin, it would be radio silence. Right now, find God." And I think that it's just really unfortunate that these people are unwilling to update their talking points, because I don't understand how many times we have to debunk reverse colorism and reverse racism until these people get the point. I made this tweet responding to him, "Colorism is one directional, and lighter skinned people are the beauty standard. So you acknowledging an underrepresented group won't have the same impact or criticism as you playing into Eurocentric beauty standards." I follow up by tweeting, "It's like they don't have the ability to understand how systemic colorism is, whether it's the job market, dating, who gets incarcerated more, who is more likely to get into institutions, has always favored lighter skinned people. So reducing the issue down to dating is very reductive to me, because there are a lot of people who think like this who are in positions of power where they have the ability to employ us or accept us into institutions. So normalizing colorism in any way, shape, or form is irresponsible and counterproductive. Especially considering the fact that this is a darker skinned person, it really speaks volumes to the level of colonization that this person has internalized. Because you as a darker skinned person of all people should not be the one coming online trying to advocate for reverse colorism. And I don't know if that's just how broken he is by society, but I find the behavior off-putting and very self-hating. And again, I think what's irritating is that they always backtrack, and them backtracking on some of the things that they have consistently tweeted for years highlights a certain level of shame that they internalize when they're having having these kinds of conversations, it's like they understand what they're saying is wrong, but they still end up doing it anyways. Because logic would dictate if your type is 100% light skin, then you saying you're an equal opportunist doesn't make any kind of sense. What happened within such a short period of time that you're no longer consistently saying the things that you have for the last few years? That's what leads me to believe that these decisions are coming from a place of insecurity and not from a place of love. A big part of why I included him in this video is I think that he is the perfect example of Black people who have a prerequisite when it comes to skin tone within dating in the Black community. It's not a coincidence that a large portion of these people are popping out with individuals who are lighter than a brown paper bag. When you analyze their profiles, you will notice that a large portion of them are reserving themselves for people of a specific skin tone. So when you come online and you hear these people gaslight these conversations around why there's such a lack of representation when it comes to darker skinned people, I really want people to understand that they're either delusional or lying. In general, I wish that people would stop trying to do these false equivalencies when it comes to colorism, because no matter how they try to spin it, one or two threads of people showcasing appreciation for darker skinned people isn't going to offset the disproportionate imbalance that a lot of darker skinned people are not only facing in the dating realm, but the workforce and many other places as well. In general, the post just seems highly unnecessary. I think that most of us probably already assumed that his type was light skin, based off the way that most of these men are popping out with nothing but them. So him coming in and explaining something that we probably already assumed really just feels counterproductive in the first place. When people try to minimize conversations around things like colorism, I try to reiterate that these decisions don't exist inside of a vacuum. Most of the time when someone's saying something like this, it's being informed by something. People don't just do things for no reason. Just like how you pick out a car, you pick out your favorite shoes, you pick out your favorite color, there's always a thought process behind why you chose it. So the idea that someone having an affinity for lighter skinned people is just a coincidence and not something being informed by colorism is borderline delusional to me. Even if he doesn't care about anyone else, I would at least hope that he would care enough about himself to stop trying to make these things equivalent when they aren't. Because as it stands, he's not doing any favors but for light skinned people and none for himself, playing further into Eurocentric beauty standards at the expense of his own identity. And it really just goes to show how enticing something like colorism is, where people are willing to put others on a pedestal above themselves, even if it may inadvertently hurt them. I am a firm believer that if someone is discriminating against someone who is darker skinned in their dating lives, then they're more than likely doing it in their professional lives. So in general, I'm never going to be okay with people trying to minimize these conversations down to someone being jealous, because a lot of people are being impacted by these societal issues on a much larger scale than I think that they realize. Moving on, this final person that I want to discuss is Twitter user by the name of Jonathan Strangle. His situation is kind of similar to Tarnu Sea's that I talked about a little earlier, where he posted a picture of himself, and this Twitter user by the name of One Noel Nix quote tweeted him after looking at his profile, asking him if he likes snow bunnies. Now, I can't really show you the profile because it's his freak account, but the general premise is that it was filled with nothing but non-Black people, and I don't think I could find a Black person in there to save my life. From my perspective, the person was just really being shady, and you really don't even have to take a look at his alt profile for you to come to the conclusion that he has an affinity for non-Black people. So if I'm being honest, the only way that I can interpret this is that he wanted to embarrass him. Some point after the post ended up going viral, he responds by saying, "Lord, they're going to drag me for this one, round 5400,000. And from my perspective, it's like, if you've had the same conversation that many times, why has nothing changed? And that's why I think that we're beyond talking to them at this point, and most people are just going straight to embarrassing them. Because from my perspective, if you're committed to playing in snow, then there's really nothing else for us to discuss. I think for so long, a lot of us tried to have these private conversations and to try and give these people the benefit of the doubt. But after so many situations of people either lying or gaslighting about what we're seeing in front of us, I feel like people have begun to lose their patience in relation to these topics. He makes several other tweets doubling down on his lies, where he says, "I just love arguing. These people on here think they know better than me, thinking I don't love being Black because I love people other than Black. I go through this shit often. I learn to love it." And this response is just so comedic to me. No one ever said that there was an issue with him liking non-Black people. It's the fact that there were no Black people on his page that he continues to try and tiptoe around. Another tweet, he says, "They get on here policing other people's sex lives because theirs is on life support. They get denied within the community and attack guys that like men other than Black because they believe that's the reason they're not getting any play." So he really just leans into the fact that we're all delusional, and the fact that there's no Black people on his page is because our sex lives are on life support. And for me, it's not rocket science. There are no black people on your page, nor are there any videos of you collaborating with any black people. So the idea of you coming online and trying to call us delusional is exactly why these conversations are being exacerbated to such a degree. He proceeds to also go into saying that there's a double standard when it comes to black men dating outside of their race and black women dating outside of their race. And I really just want to put this talking point to rest. Black women have always been the most race loyal of every single demographic. So the fact that you, as the least loyal, has the audacity to come online and compare your situation to theirs is a false equivalency. If a small portion of black women decided to date out, still wouldn't be anywhere close to the overwhelming amount of black men who have reserved themselves for non-black people. After getting dogpiled for some amount of time, he ends up finally coming online and telling the truth. And before I read this, I want to throw in a trigger warning. So after someone tells him that he needs therapy, his response was, "I was brutally SA'd from the ages of 8 to 10 by a family member and revolving door of men when I lived in Baton Rouge. Most of them being black, but not all. It caused me to feel a type of way when I lay with black men. It's not their fault, though." I don't think that any of this is really any of our business. However, when you are such a public figure with such a large platform, sometimes you are going to receive a certain level of backlash. And while you don't need to tell us your life story, or even really owe us an explanation, I think that gaslighting and antagonizing people on something very clear that's in front of them is not necessarily the best solution either. You're projecting onto us your trauma. You're projecting all of these negative things onto us simply for pointing out an observation. And truthfully, this tactic worked for a long time. Pointing out that people are miserable or jealous was enough to silence them for quite an amount of time. But now that a lot of black queer people are realizing that staying silent isn't really getting us anywhere, and being agreeable does nothing for anyone, we're starting to see them become a lot more bold in regards to these types of situations. So if we notice that every single person you're engaging with on a romantic level is white, then we're typically either going to ask or disengage. Because gone are the days that we keep propping people up on a pedestal who've made it their mission to prioritize every single demographic but us. And I hate that it has to be this way, but there's really no other option going forward. These people have had an ample amount of time to self-correct, but that just doesn't seem to be something that they're interested in. So as a result, we don't have any other choice but to become hypervigilant in regards to these situations. What I find really interesting about this omission, despite him having several horrible experiences with non-black people as well, the only people that he seems to want to punish are the black ones. And this is very common amongst a lot of chronic swirlers. One or two black people can do something wrong, and it's a reflection of the entire community, whereas someone non-black can do the exact same thing and be treated as an individual. If there wasn't any truth to what was happening, then most people would end up paying these conversations dust. Instead, we're seeing the same variation of the same conversation go viral over and over and over again. I want to throw in a disclaimer that people who gravitate in predominantly white spaces or have predominantly white partners are typically going to have a history of race play. And it comes to no surprise that when you go through Jonathan's profile, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. A big part of why I'm bringing this up is a large portion of that day, he vehemently denied being into race play. The topic came up on several different occasions, and every single time he denied being into it. However, as always, the Twitter detectives did their work. On July 10th of 2025, a profile by the name of Black for White made this post saying "Black men fucking white jocks compilation." And his response under the post is, "Love these compilation." And scenarios like this are why people are struggling to take others seriously who engage in behavior like this. It's like you're following an account that specifically says Black for White, you're commenting under all of its racially charged posts, and you're retweeting this imagery out to 30,000 people. However, you're not into race play, and us suggesting it means that we're delusional. So he can take his excuses and his lies because I'm simply no longer interested. I'm not here to dictate anyone else's healing process. However, playing into the plantation bull archetype does not seem to be doing him any favors. However, I think that should do it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and comment, and I will be happy to see you in the next one.